to like it very much. So I would say that maybe we ought to consider a golden rule in foreign policy. Don't do to other nations what we don't want to have them do to us. So we endlessly bomb these countries, and then we wonder why they get upset with us, and yet it continues on and on. I mean, this idea that we can't debate foreign policy, then all we have to do is start another war. I mean, it's warmongering. They're building up for another war against Iran, and people can't wait to get in another war. This country doesn't need another war. We need to quit the ones we're in. We need to save the money and bring our troops home.
Governor Romney. And again, the bell may be making a comeback. Governor Romney, should the United States negotiate with the Taliban to end the fighting in Afghanistan?
Of course not. And Speaker Gingrich is right. Of course you take out our enemies, wherever they are. These people have declared war on us. They've killed Americans. We go anywhere they are and we kill them. And the right thing for Osama bin Laden was the bullet in the head that he received. That's the right course for people who kill American citizens. Now, the Taliban is killing Americans. This president has done an extraordinary thing. He announced the date of our withdrawal. He announced the date of the withdrawal of our surge forces based upon a political calendar, not the calendar that the commanders on the ground said it was based for our mission. That was wrong. And then he announced the day that we're going to pull out of the country altogether. And now he wants to negotiate from a position of extraordinary weakness. You don't negotiate with your enemy from a position of weakness as this president has done. The right course for America is to recognize we're under attack. We're under attack by people, whether they're al-Qaeda or other radical violent jihadists around the world, and we're going to have to take action around the world to protect ourselves. And hopefully we can do it as we did with Osama bin Laden, as opposed to going to war as we had to do in the case of Iraq. The right way, Congressman Paul, in my view, is to keep us from having to go to those wars, is to have a military so strong that no one would ever think of testing it. That's the kind of military we have to have, and we have to pursue our interests around the world.
Governor Romney, Mitchell Rice, who I believe is one of your top foreign policy advisors, said that the Taliban may well be, quote, our enemy and our negotiating partner. He said this means that some type of negotiated solution is the best near-term bet to halt the fighting. Is he wrong?
Yes. The right course for America is not to negotiate with the Taliban while the Taliban are killing our soldiers. The right course is to recognize they are the enemy of the United States. It's the Vice President who said they're not the enemy of the United States. The Vice President's wrong. They are the enemy. They're killing American soldiers. We don't negotiate from a position of weakness as we're pulling our troops out. The right course for us is to strengthen the Afghan military force so they can reject the Taliban. Think what it says to the people in Afghanistan and the military in Afghanistan. When we're asking them to stand up and fight to protect the sovereignty of their people, if they see us, their ally, turning and negotiating with the very people they're going to have to protect their nation from. It's the wrong course. The Vice President's wrong. We should not negotiate for the Taliban. We should defeat the Taliban.
Senator Santorum, you said earlier in the Libyan operation that President Obama missed an opportunity to capitalize on rebel offenses. Now in Syria, at the hands of Bashar al-Assad, it's estimated that some 5,000 people have been killed. The country appears to be sliding into civil war, and Arab League peace monitors seem to be failing. How would President Santorum deal with this international crisis?
Well, first off, President Obama has dealt with it about as badly as possible. First, he emboldened Assad by coming into office and establishing an embassy there, reestablishing diplomatic relationships, going through the process of trying to rehabilitate this tyrant, all, I'm sure, to the consternation of our friend Israel, who has consistently done the opposite, tried to step away and isolate Israel, while at the time they're trying to negotiate in a very difficult situation in their country. With respect to Syria, look, Syria and Assad are a threat to Israel. I was the author of a bill when I was in the United States Senate to put sanctions on Syria, and in fact they worked to get Syria out of Lebanon, which was step number one. That's no longer a viable option. We need to rally the international community, work and cooperate with removing Assad, and work in concert with the Arab League, work with others. As far as a military mission on our own, no, I do not support a military mission into Syria, but we should be much more aggressive in following through with policies that effectuate the removal of Assad for the benefit of the Syrian people and for our neighbor and for their neighbor Israel. Governor Perry, since the Islamist-oriented party took over in Turkey, the murder rate of women has increased 1,400% there. Press freedom has declined to the level of Russia. The Prime Minister of Turkey has embraced Hamas, and Turkey has threatened military force against both Israel and Cyprus. Given Turkey's turn, do you believe Turkey still belongs in NATO?
Well, obviously, when you have a country that is being ruled by what many would perceive to be Islamic terrorists, when you start seeing that type of activity against their own citizens, then yes, not only is it time for us to have a conversation about whether or not they belong to be in NATO, but it's time for the United States, when we look at their foreign aid, to go to zero with it. And you go to zero with foreign aid for all of those countries, and it doesn't make any difference who they are. You go to zero with that foreign aid, and then you have the conversation about, do they have America's best interest in mind? And when you have countries like Turkey that are moving far away from the country that I lived in back in the 1970s as a pilot in the United States Air Force, that was our ally, that worked with us. But today, we don't see that. Our president has a foreign policy that makes our allies very nervous, and it emboldens our enemies. And we have to have a president of the United States that clearly sends a message, whether it's to Israel, our friend, and there should be no space between the United States and Israel, period. And we need to send a powerful message to countries like Iran and Syria and Turkey that the United States is serious and that we're going to have to be dealt with.
Governor Perry, you sounded like you wanted to get in when Congressman Paul was talking at the beginning of this round on foreign policy.
Well, I was just saying that I thought maybe that the noise that you were looking for was a gong.
Do you have any reaction to what Congressman Paul said?
Listen, as you know, I volunteered to wear the uniform of our country. And what bothers me more than anything is this administration and this administration's disdain all too often for our men and women in uniform. Whether it was what they've said about the Marines. Now, these young men made a mistake. They obviously made a mistake.
You're talking about urinating on the corpses.
They made a mistake that the military needs to deal with, and they need to be punished. But the fact of the matter, the fact of the matter is this. When the Secretary of Defense calls that a despicable act, when he calls that utterly despicable, let me tell you what's utterly despicable. Cutting Danny Pearl's head off and showing the video of it. Hanging our contractors from bridges. That's utterly despicable. For our President, for the Secretary of State, for the Department of Defense Secretary to make those kind of statements about those young Marines, yes, they need to be punished. But when you see this president with that type of disdain for our country, taking $1 trillion out of our defense budget, 100,000 of our military off of our front lines, and a reduction of force. I lived through a reduction of force once, and I saw the result of it in the sands of Iran in 1979. Never again.
Grant. Kelly. Yes, sir. Congressman Paul.
Just a very brief statement. I, too, served in the Air Force for 5 years during the height of the Cold War from '62 to '68. So I've had a little bit of experience. Matter of fact, I was over in the Afghanistan-Pakistan region. But I would like to point out one thing about the Taliban. The Taliban used to be our allies when we were fighting the Russians. So the Taliban are people who their main goal is to keep foreigners off their land. It's the Al-Qaeda. You can't mix the two. The Al-Qaeda want to come here to kill us. But Taliban just says, we don't want foreigners. We need to understand that, or we can't resolve this problem in the Middle East. We're going to spend a lot of lives and a lot of money for a long time to come.
Kelly Evans.
Governor Romney, when President Obama signed the National Defense Authorization Act into law, he enacted a provision allowing him to indefinitely detain American citizens in U.S. military custody. Many, including Congressman Paul, have called this unconstitutional. At the same time, the bill did provide money to continue funding U.S. troops. Governor Romney, as president, would you have signed the National Defense Act as written?
Yes, I would have, and I do believe that it's appropriate to have in our nation the capacity to detain people who are threats to this country, who are members of al-Qaeda. Look, you have every right in this country to protest and to express your views on a wide range of issues, but you don't have a right to join a group that has challenged America and has threatened killing Americans, has killed Americans, and has declared war against America. That's treason. And in this country, we have a right to take those people and put them in jail. And I recognize that when you're in a setting when there are enemy combatants, and some of them on our own soil, that could possibly be abused. There are a lot of things I think this president does wrong, lots of them. But I don't think he's going to abuse this power, and I know that if I were president, I would not abuse this power. And I can also tell you that, in my view, you have to choose people who you believe have sufficient character not to abuse the power of the presidency and to make sure that we do not violate our constitutional principles. But let me tell you, people who join al-Qaeda are not entitled to the rights of due process under our normal legal code. They are entitled instead to be treated as enemy combatants.
Senator Santorum.
I mean, I still got time. So as long as I still have time, I just want to go back and agree with what Governor Perry said. The most extraordinary thing that's happened with this military authorization is the president's planning on cutting $1 trillion out of military spending. Our Navy is smaller than it's been since 1917. Our Air Force is smaller and older than any time since 1947. We're cutting our number of troops. We're not giving our veterans the care they deserve. We simply cannot continue to cut our Department of Defense budget if we're going to remain the hope of the earth, and I will fight to make sure America retains military superiority.
Senator Santorum, 30 seconds to you, sir. Same question. Would you have signed, as president, would you have signed the National Defense Authorization Act into law as written?
So he gets 2 minutes and I get 30 seconds.
Take whatever time you want.
Okay. First off, I would say this. What the law should be and what the law has been is that if you are a United States citizen and you are detained as an enemy combatant, then you have the right to go to federal court and file a habeas corpus petition and be provided a lawyer. That was the state of the law before the National Defense Authorization Act, and that should be the state of the law today. You should not have, you should not have, if you're not an American citizen, that's one thing, but if you are a citizen and you're being held indefinitely, then you have a right to go to a federal court. And again, the law prior to the National Defense Authorization Act was that you had the right to go to a court and for that court to determine by a preponderance of the evidence whether you could continue to be held. That is a standard that should be maintained, and I would maintain that standard as president.
Congressman Paul, a different question. Your plan to...
Why can't I ask you about that one?
You were included in the question in the first place. Do you want 30 seconds to respond to this?
I need a minute. No, I think we're going in the wrong direction for the protections of our liberties here at home. They're under deep threat. The Patriot Act has eliminated the Fourth Amendment. We now have a policy of preemptive war. You don't have to declare war, and you don't even have to have an enemy. We can start the wars. That's what preemptive war is all about. Now, with the Military Appropriation Defense Act, this is major. This says that the military can arrest an American citizen for under suspicion, and he can be held indefinitely without habeas corpus and denied a lawyer indefinitely, even in a prison here. Let me give you one statistic. You're worrying about all these, where we're going to try people, where are they going to do? We have to do it secretly because our rule of law is so flawed. We have arrested 362 people related to al-Qaeda top operation. 260 of them are in prison. They've been tried and convicted. So don't give up on our American judicial system so easily, I beg of you.
Kelly.
All right, change of topics. This question to Governor Perry. What measures would you immediately take to improve the housing market? Or do you consider any such intervention to be an overreach of government?
Well, obviously, the first thing we need to do in this country is cut the tax rate down to where the people feel confident that they can risk their capital and have a return on their investment. That's the reason I laid out a simple and flat tax of 20% with their home mortgage deduction and charitable expenses and local taxes, get rid of capital gains tax, get rid of the benefits tax, get rid of the tax on Social Security benefits, and then take 20% of that and mail your check in. I mean, even Timothy Geithner can get